going to start by bringing in a background node. And we'll connect the background node to the media out. With the background node selected, I'm going to come into the inspector. If you can't see the inspector, just click the word inspector in the top right hand corner and the inspector panel will open. I'm then going to come down to the alpha of the background and drop that down to 0, and this makes the background transparent. Background nodes are extremely important in Davinci Resolve Fusion, and this is because it acts as a canvas, so it brings our timeline resolution of 1920 by 1080 into Fusion. I now know that this is my background which is acting as the canvas. I'm then going to bring in some more nodes. I'll bring in the S-shaped node, and with S-shaped you have to bring in a render. So S-shaped particles and 3D require render. I'm going to connect my shape to my render. Hover over the output of my canvas, let go, and it creates a merge. And I can now see my hexagon in the viewer. I'm going to highlight the shape and then we'll take a look in the inspector. In the top right of the inspector we have the reset button. The reset button will reset all the parameters of that node back to default. You can change the defaults and we'll look at that in a future video. To the left we have the padlock icon, and this locks all the controls, the parameters, so nobody else can make any adjustments. The pin, this is really useful. It will pin open our controls. Next to the pin is the one we're looking for. This is the versions. Just select this, it will reveal our 6 versions. And I'm just quickly going to go through these. We're going to keep it quite basic. I'm going to come into version 2. So version 1 is our hexagon. Come into version 2. And I'm going to change the number of sides to 4. So we've now got a diamond. I'm going to come into version 3, and this time I'm going to come down to the angle and change the angle to 45. We've now got a square. Go into 4, this time I'm going to change the sides. I'm going to select 3, and we've now got a triangle. Go into 5. What I'm going to do in 5 is actually in the sides is go to 50 or above. That will give me a circle. And then in 6, I'm going to make the circle smaller. We can use the width and height here if we wish. You can grab the sides. I'll change the colour and show you. Let's make that black. So maybe we're making the centre of a clock or something like that. If I hover over the side, you'll see that it highlighted, and I can change the size. And this is actually moving both the width and the height inside the inspector. And we can have a smaller circle. With the versions, the one with the red line is the default. So if I come back to 1, we've got our hexagon, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So we've got our versions there all ready to go. Even when we save this, it will retain the versions. So if we highlighted all the nodes, we right clicked, went to settings, save as, and if we just went to our desktop and we double clicked and we popped it in here, we gave it a name. That is now saved with the versions for this node in, and you can have versions in every single node. Another thing to show you is if you wanted to clear them, is as long as the red line isn't underneath it, come to the version and you can right click and select clear. So now we've cleared those versions out. But the one we saved, then that is still available with all 6 versions. So we can save this out, whether it be to a folder on our desktop, or we could put it as a tool. We could put it in the macro. So for example, you could have the S shape saved as just a macro with the different versions in. So that is versions for nodes. It's super powerful. Next, we are going to take a look at versioning for the whole composition. The way we do it in here is we just come up to the top left where we've got the clips, and we open the clips panel. Now the clips panel is a film strip that will show you all the clips on your timeline, but as we've just got this one fusion composition, then it's here on the left. If we right click, you will notice that we've got here composition 1, and that's actually ticked, so it's loaded, but I'm going to rename it. I've renamed it version 1.0.0. You can name it anything you want as long as it starts with a letter. And now what I can do when I come back in here, I can create a new composition, and what happens is it duplicates the composition. So now we've got version 1 and version 2, and because the tick's next to version 2, that's what we're working on. Let me bring in another S shape and another render, connect them together, connect this to our main pipe, And with this, I'm going to change it from a solid, give it a border. Let's change the color. Now I want to change width and height. What we can do, we can actually connect these together. If I come to height, right click and come down to expression, we get our expression field. But just here, this little cross is the pick whip. If I click and drag, this is the pick whip. And we can use this to connect multiple controls together. So if I just hover over the width and let go, you now see we've got width in the expression box. You can just type that in if you wish. Now the height won't move, it's locked because it's connected to width. So when we move width, we now get our border that we've got there. So we've changed our composition, and I want to save this as an increment of my original version. So if I come down into the thumbnail here in our clips panel, I can come to composition, give it a name, and now we can see that I've got version 1 and I've got version 1.01, and I can keep going with this. I can do increments of my whole composition as we go along. If I decide I may need that in the future, but I just want to go back to my original version, then I can come up here to my original version and just load, and then it will reload that back into Fusion. So here is a great way to do versioning for your whole composition. So you can add nodes, take nodes away, experiment a little bit with different nodes and different settings, and then if you want to go back to your last version, and it's very easy to do so. I'm on the edit page because I'm going to show you macro versioning, and the way to do that is if we come into the effects library and I come down to titles, I'm just going to grab the top one just to show you, and this is a call out. Select your composition, which in this case is a title, and inside the inspector we've got at the top right, we've got the reset button, and then just next to that to the left we've got a little magic wand, and we need to click that magic wand, which is then going to take us into Fusion, and it will bring in that macro. It may look a little bit different than what you have because I always save macros as groups now, and the reason I save them as a group, if I double click this, we can see every single node, and we can add nodes and we can change all the parameters very easy. If it's a single macro, that's difficult to do. It is possible, but it is difficult to do. With the group highlighted, I can come into the inspector. We can activate versions just like we did with nodes, and then we can set some things up. So let's go to number 2. I'm going to change this to Davinci Resolve Studio. I'm going to change the font. I'm going to make it smaller. I don't want to have subtext. So that's my second version. Third version, I'm just going to change its position. I'm going to bring it down to the bottom and put it over here on the left. Now the first version is the default, the second version is in the center, the third version is what I'm going to be using over and over again, and I just want the others just in case. But again, you can change every parameter inside your macro. Once we've done that, I'm going to have number 3 as my default because that's what I want, and then come back down to the node or the group of nodes, right click and go to settings, save as. I have quick access pop-up installed, so I can just go straight into my title folder, and we'll go back into that where we've got the GTS Gravity 161 title. I don't want to overwrite that because that's my default without versions. Just at the end, just put a letter. So I'm having GTS 161A, and I'm going to save that out. If I come into the edit page, go to the effects library, titles, I'm going to take this off and bring in the new one. When I select it, you can see in the inspector we've got our presets. My default preset I wanted as 3 or versions, and then 1 was the original, 2 was the one in the middle, and 3 is the one that I want. That is macro versioning inside Davinci Resolve Fusion. In this part of the video, I'm going to show you how you can load settings. You can combine this with versions to make it extremely powerful, but to keep this section simple, I'm just going to show you how to load settings. I'm going to grab this one, and I'm using this because it's slightly broke, and I want to show you something. I'm going to put Davinci Resolve Studio, and I'm going to play it. It comes in from the left. I've also got the opportunity here where I can switch sides, so I can switch sides. However, it's too big when it comes in from the right. What I need to do here is I need to drop the size. Perfect. And if I switch the sides, I've got it coming in this side as well. What I'm going to do, I'm going to select it so it's on the right, so it's different than the original. And then we're going to come up to just to the left of the reset, the magic wand. We're going to click that, and that's going to take us into Fusion. I'm going to select the group, and we can do versioning. So what you can do, select versions, and you can create versions. You can do that. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click and do settings, save as. But this time I'm going to go to a folder on my desktop. I'm going to come into this folder, and I'm just going to save that out as the folder. And then I'm going to come back into the edit page. And if you remember, it comes in from the right. It's smaller. It's got rounded corners. I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to bring the original one back in. Now, the original one comes in from the left. It's got no writing on. You could put some text in, but I'm not going to for this. So this is a blank one, and we know it comes in from the left. What I can do, highlight it, come into the inspector, select the magic wand to go into Fusion. And this time I just come over the node, select it, right click, and then select load. And navigate to that folder, double click it. And now, if we go back to the edit page, so the settings that we saved, we reload. And if you combine this with versioning, then this is really powerful because you can make hundreds of versions of a particular tool or title in this case, and then you could load them in the Fusion page. That's a really powerful way of just adding more than 6 or multiples of 6 if you've got a large composition to do or a large project to do. Something I was thinking of with this is possibly the notations. I've seen a lot of music teachers talk about building notations inside Davinci Resolve. Well, what you could do is you could have a notation macro. We have a title which is actually notations, and then you could just load different settings which could be different songs. So once you've set it all up, you can save it out as a file and then load that in for a specific song. Super powerful, and that was loading settings back into a node from Fusion. Very important though, it has to be the same node or the same macro, because otherwise it can't make a setting for a tool that isn't there. This section of the video is going to be preset buttons. So let's start by bringing in a background node into Fusion. And I'm going to connect that background node to the media out. I'm going to keep this really basic, because if you've got 100 parameters inside a macro and you want to change 99 of them, what you're going to do here is very, very long. So I recommend plenty of planning in advance and have a pen and piece of paper because you're going to need it. We've got the background node highlighted, and in the inspector, we've got the control. And viewer 2 is a black panel, and that's because it's set with these controls. I'm just going to go 0.3, 0.5 and 0.8 in here. So I get this blue color. In the past, you've noticed when we hover over these in the bottom left, we get some information. That information is the node, background 1, and then it says dot top left red. That's the information you need to write down. So if you wanted top left red to be 1, and then if we come down to the next one, it says top left green 0, come down to the next one, top left blue 0, and alpha 1. We're going to leave the alpha alone. So you don't have to set a preset. If it's not going to change, then you don't have to set a preset. And the advantage of these button presets, it doesn't affect any control. So if you've got keyframes on there, if you've got anim curves on, doesn't matter. You can change any parameter for any control. You can change any control in any modifier. You can also switch the node on and off, which is for a future video. We're just going to do a simple preset here. I've changed the information here so I can show you the next bit. Let me come to Workspace and open the expression builder, available on Ko-fi. It's only a £5, and it helps me tremendously. I'm going to go to search and I'm going to type in console. There we go. And then I'm going to copy the one at the bottom. What I'm going to do, I'm going to come into the background node. Now you can right click and edit controls, but also if you're in the inspector, you can come to the name in the inspector, right click and edit controls. There's 2 edit control panels. One's for the nodes and one's for modifiers, and we'll cover that in a later video. I'm going to edit controls, and I'm going to make a new control, call it dump. When you're making your presets and you're going to make it into a macro, leave it on the user page. I'm going to put it on the color page so you can see what's going on in the inspector. I'm going to create a button. That button is going to be 0.5, which is half the width of the inspector, and I'm going to paste that code in there and click OK. I'm then going to press Shift and 0 to open the console and put the console up here. So I've changed these settings, and now when I click dump, it puts the code into the console. And when you look in the console, you can see you've got the node name, and then below that is input. And you can see top left green, value 5, top left blue, value 8, top left red, value 3. And that corresponds to what's in the inspector. And that's important because when you build something and then you change it in the inspector and you want to keep those controls, so you want to come back to that as a preset, you need to make a note of these. It is easier in the code, but I'm going to show you how to do it inside Davinci Resolve. We want to remember these values, and you can hover over the controls to get the name at the bottom. So hopefully we've got that bit sorted. What I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to Expression Builder, and I'm going to build the first one. The node is background 1, so the first thing is the name of the node. You then have a colon, and we then do set input, and it's camel case, so it's a capital S and a capital I. We then open the parentheses, and we do a quotation. I'm using single quotes, but I do believe double quotes work. And then we want to put the control top left red, and that's camel case as well. And then we close that quotation mark, and we have a comma. Make sure you put the comma, and then I'm going to put what value I want, which is 1.0. I'm then going to close that. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to show you what happens with this. So we'll copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to close that, come into my background, edit controls, and this is going to be background red. If you're making it, leave it in user. I'm going to put it in color so you can see it. I'm going to make a button. The button's going to be half the width of the inspector, and I'm going to paste that code in and click it. And we've now got a button here. Now, all I did was say background 1, top left red, set the input. So when I select this, it changes the red value to 1. But what happens if I just want red? Well, what that means is I've actually got to set the green and blue to 0. So if I go back into the Expression Builder, it's background 1, colon, set input, open parentheses, quotation mark, top left red, close quotation, comma, 1.0, and then close parentheses. I'm then I'm actually going to copy and paste that. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. So now I can change this to blue. I can spell, and I want that to be 0. I'm going to change this to green. And remember, you get by hovering over the controls, you can see in the bottom left what the name of the control is. This is going to be 0 as well. I'm then going to copy that, and I'm going to close it. I'm going to come back into edit controls. Now, when you make a control, it's always at the bottom. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to delete what's in there and paste the new code in there and select OK. And now when I press this, what happens? In fact, let's take this off. When I press this, it sets the control. So it sets the red to 1, it sets the green and the blue to 0. We didn't change the alpha, so we don't need to add the alpha. So you can create as many control or parameter changes that you want just by including them inside the button. Now, when you look at the code, it's added some extra code. This N is for new line. But this is really doable inside Davinci Resolve Fusion. Now, the next thing is, well, hang on a minute. What happens if I want a macro? Well, let's just make it into a macro. Let's go create macro, BGR, and then I'm going to put the controls in. So let's have, and here we go. Select the actual buttons. Save as group. And now, and this is the thing, because I did it on the color page, it's now there on their own page. If you have it in user, it would have been under controls. But let's just change it and then let's try it. And there we go. It works in a macro. So that is preset buttons, and you can do it inside Davinci Resolve Fusion. I'll do a complete video of what I'm doing in the code and how to turn off nodes, but it's super powerful. Push a button and all your parameters change, but keeps all your keyframes free. If you've got auto keyframing on, so you've actually got a keyframe on an animation, it would add another keyframe. This is just super powerful, and I wanted to get it recorded because I'm going to go and have some food now, and I'll relax, and I'll go to bed, and I'll wake up in the morning and I'll go, I've forgotten. That's why this bit is a bit rough. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.